welcome to Daily Spark TV. I am Dr. Angela Butts-Chester, and you know what I like to do? I want to enlighten, inspire, and empower you to be your best. Well, today we are talking about drinking away the pain. My guest today is Sarah Marchbank, and that's something serious. That's what we're talking about, something serious. Addiction. Now, you can be addicted to various things for various reasons, and we're going to touch on just a few of them today. Sarah, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Let me tell you a little bit more about Sarah. She was a registered general nurse at the University College Hospital in London, then went on to be a get her postgraduate degree at Westminster Children's Hospital in London, and gained the qualification of registered sick children's nurse. She worked her way up to junior sister in the pediatric oncology ward. She now adds author to her title as well. Her book, Dying for a Drink. Thank you so much, Sarah, for being on today. Addiction. To make sure we're all on the same page, I want to ask you, what does addiction mean when you talk about it?
For me personally, it's a terrible form of bondage, you know, like chains, wrapped in chains, yeah, which you just, well, for me, time and time again, I've not been able to break free from when I'm in active addiction, yeah.
Now, there's something that someone may be unfamiliar with, that term of active addiction. Yeah. Now, again, to make sure that we're all on the same page, does that mean that you are dealing with it in the present moment?
Active addiction is when you're actually, say for me, when I was drinking or taking drugs. Yeah, so that's active addiction, and then recovery is when I'm not drinking or drugging.
Addiction can be dressed in various forms. Yeah. It can be sex, pills, drama. It could be, various things. For someone who is concerned and they think that their loved one, friend, family member may be dealing with addiction, are there any particular signs or symptoms that perhaps they can look out for?
Yes, I know, because my lovely family and my children and my lovely first husband all saw those signs. For me, I was a social drinker for a long time, and I crossed what they call the invisible line into fully blown addiction. And the signs for me, which my family and friends will know, is that I don't answer my phone. I always drink at home, doors double locked, don't answer the phone, nobody sees me, and then they start getting worried.
If they see that in their loved one, and they say, boy, that sounds awfully familiar. Sometimes one's intention is good, but the delivery doesn't always go over as planned. How can someone lovingly, kind gesture, what can they do that says, hey, I'm worried, I'm concerned, but I'm also there for you and I want to help?
Well, I've had that from, as I say, my family, my friends, and my two beautiful children, Sam and Molly, and my three best girlfriends, Amanda, Claire, and Helen. Really, it's a case that they have all loved me unconditionally. That's not to say they've liked me. No, with my, especially when I drank to blackout and said terrible things to my lovely sister Jo. And I think really, I know for my family, especially my mother, because my father's no longer with us, she's had to distance herself from me in order to protect herself, if that makes sense. The rule that my best friends had with me when I got out of rehab was no texting. It had to be a phone call, and then they could hear my voice if I was drinking. So of course they caught me out plenty of times. So I think, very often I think that is the key. And my mum got it right. It was to love me from a distance, because the only person that can help themselves is them, as in me. I'm the one who has to reach out for help, ask for help, you know, get back to AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, or NA, Narcotics Anonymous, because pills became a part of my story towards the end. And, you know, just reaching out and, you know, finding a great sponsor, starting the 12-step program straight away. And basically, I love the AA saying it's how, which is honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. You know, the willingness to go to any lengths to stay stopped, if that makes sense. Because for me, stopping, well, I can't say it was easy, but I couldn't stop unless I was hospitalized or in rehab. But for me, it was harder to stay stopped, if that makes sense.
And I think that for so many people, they may be saying, well, my addiction isn't alcohol, but it's fill in the blank. It's the stopping. It's the staying in the stopped position that I think is the hardest, because we do have those various triggers, be it that it's something that's that we see on television, or it's in our environment, or it's simply being bored or hungry or alone. But there's something that triggers, and it can put you in that space. Something that you said that I want to kind of bring out, and that is that your mother decided to love you from afar.
Yeah.
How do we approach the person that we need to love from afar? How do we say, I love you, but I may have to stay home a little bit while you're going through this?
Well, my mum, who I love dearly, she basically wrote to me. Well, it was she'd either write, or she would ring up, or I'd find out from a friend of hers, or my sister, you know. But she needed to do it. I mean, you know, in order to protect herself. So, you know, I think that's a very important thing, you know, for loved ones of addicts, is that, you know, sometimes just be, you know, loving them, and you know, it's almost enabling them to stay in addiction if you're too kind and too nice, if that makes sense. Yes, and so I believe that, yeah, very often it has to be tough love.
Do you think that many times, and I know that you're speaking from your perspective, those people that are kind, do you tend to maybe go to them a little bit more often when you're in active addiction?
My best friends, who are lovely, Amanda and Claire, and my other friend Helen lives in Perth. My problem is that I don't reach out for help until it's too late. So therefore, as I said, that was the rule. You know, it wasn't no texting, it had to be a phone call. But they've continued to love me unconditionally, as have my beautiful children, Sam and Molly. Well, they're young adults now. And as I say again, they may not have liked me on many occasions, because I've caused chaos, devastation, pain, fear. I mean, you know, the fear that I've put my loved ones and family through, you know. I mean, they honestly believed that this disease would end in my death.
Yes. And you know, I think that is the fear of especially our loved ones, our parents, our spouses, our children. And so many times they will actually articulate that, even though it's said in anger, perhaps in a raised voice, or with tears, you know, stop. Could you just stop? But I'm so glad that there are programs now that help the other side understand what's going on with the person that's dealing with the addiction. If there's someone who says, I'm not as bad as I could be, but I think, right? I'm not as bad as I could be, but I think I have a problem, maybe. What would you tell that person?
I would tell that person what a lovely lady in Australia, where I lived for 20 years. I think it was one of my first AA meetings, and her story was horrific. And afterwards I went up to her and I said, I just want to say that was incredible. And she, you know what she said to me, and this is what I'll pass on: don't let my story become yours. And guess what? Most of it did.
Yeah.
You see, so that's what I would say to anybody, you know. You don't have to go that far down, you know. Anybody has a choice. I mean, they talk about, you know, this elevator analogy in AA, you know. You can decide where you get off,
Right.
you know. And then you can get back on and go up, or you can go down. But ultimately, the choice is down to yourself, you know. Nobody has ever forced a drink down my throat, so I don't blame anybody. You know, I take full responsibility. I wish, I know I can't turn the clock back, but you know, it is what it is, and I can't change it. But yes, my biggest regret is the hurt and damage and yeah, that I've caused to my loved ones.
Now, for so many people, they're saying, thank God my loved one is now on the road to recovery. They've been sober for X amount of time, and they've apologized. Their question is, was it a sincere apology? How do I know that they really mean it this time? How can we know if the apology is real and they're sincere this time?
You know, it's a bit like how long is a piece of string? I mean, it's this whole trust issue. You know, you can't put a time frame on, you know, people trusting you again, because, you know, I have relapsed so many times, and my first lovely husband, Johnny, I mean, he officially calls me the rehab stroke therapy queen, because, I have been in multiple rehabs, I've had a lot of therapy, and, you know, yeah, it's just, this is a very, the reason I'm on this show is to basically, I don't want this to come across wrong, but it's to scare any addicts out there, quite frankly, because, you know, they say it in the rooms of, you know, AA, NA, you know, it's chronic, progressive, and often fatal. And, you know, I will never know how many times I've nearly died, because in the end I was drinking to blackout. And my body is like a roadmap of injuries, broken bones, stitches, multiple bruising, so yeah. So I will actually never know how many times I could have died.
You know, I just want to make sure that you hear today how proud I am of you for being so brave. So many times we forget to applaud people for their bravery. Bravery isn't always just running into the burning building or, you know, keeping that little child from drowning, perhaps. Sometimes it's saying, hey, I went through the fire, and every day there's a potential fire, and I choose not to go that way. So, bravo for choosing to share your story. And I think that there is going to be someone out there who needs to hear it from you, the way that you share it in your words, and it's going to be the world of difference to them. Thank you so much for being brave and doing that. Now, for many people who don't understand what it's like dealing with addiction, they may say, hey, listen, you've been sober for 6 months, and you're starting to act weird again. Is there something that they can do to not poke or trigger or be offensive in their language to the person that may be on that slippery slope?
I think probably the worst thing that you can say to somebody that's about to relapse is, you know, you better not do that again, because, you know, the pointing of the finger, that doesn't work, I know. Because, and it's another AA saying, but you know, resentment is one of the #1 offenders when it comes to relapsing. And I know for me, I mean, I've said, and it's the truth, you know, nobody poured the drink down my throat, but, you know, I've got drunk and then I've had resentments, and then I've drunk more, and it's like, and the resentment gets bigger, and, you know, so I can't afford myself that luxury, and I don't, you know, I don't hold resentments. Because, no, it just wouldn't work.
You know, I think that we should not live in that space anyway.
No, we shouldn't.
We have to live in a place where forgiveness is available, that we don't have to walk down the path of shame and guilt and resentment every day. You know, being a counselor, I try my best to always create that safe zone for people to be able to share. And though I say it jokingly, there's a little bit of truth to the fact that our friends and family will shame us. We don't have to, unfortunately, we don't have to do that to ourselves. We need to learn how to heal, how to step out of that place of hurt and pain, and to be able to articulate, I need some help today, and I don't need you to point your finger at me. I need you to help me. So thank you for saying that, because people's intentions, again, are great.
Yes.
But sometimes their word choice can be a little painful. Well, I know that it's almost time for us to take a break, but I want to definitely pick your brain a little bit more, because I think you have so much more to share. Yep. We'll be back right after this.
Hi, my name's Sarah Marchbank, and I've written a book that was published last year. It's called Dying for a Drink. I used a pen name because I wanted to remain anonymous. The pen name is Amelia Baker. It can be found on Amazon or Author House Publishing Company. That's in the UK. I have an email address, which is authorameliabaker@gmail.com, and it's a true story. It's horrific. I've written about things I swore I'd take to the grave, and for any fellow addicts out there, I just wish you all the best, and just, you know, pray that you will not have to go through what I have put myself through and my loved ones. Because it's not worth it. Nobody needs drugs or alcohol. We need water, we need air, we need shelter, but we don't need drugs and alcohol. And that is my message today. Thank you.
And we are back. Welcome back to Daily Spark TV. Sarah, I want to ask you, when we're dealing with addiction, and it could be a different effect on family at various stages, but having gone through it, what effect does addiction have on one's family?
Absolutely devastating. And as I've already mentioned, fear. There's a lot of fear. I mean, it's just the amount of chaos and hurt. That's what my addiction, when I've been in active addiction, that has been the result. And I think for me, the last rehab I was in London, and I think one of the best, well, I didn't like my therapist at all, because he was very, he was good, you know, he was good, and everything was tailor-made for me. So one of the things he asked me for my children's email, well, they're not children, Sam's 25 and Molly's 22. He asked me for their email addresses, and I said, why? And he said, because there's a thing called a collateral damage letter. And I said, oh, and I was still detoxing, and I was like, oh dear, oh no, oh gosh, I know what I've put them through. And he said, Sarah, trust me, please. If you can trust me, this will be one of the most important things that you'll ever do. Yes. And they did write those letters, and I had so much respect for them. That I thought that their dad had helped them, but he didn't. They were their own words, and they were horrific, and they were honest. They both said they loved me, but, you know, it was, and those letters I read every day for a year, because they were absolutely horrific. And I needed to hear that. Yes. I needed to hear how my addiction, how it had affected my children. I mean, it was fine when they were younger, and I was, you know, I didn't drink very much, and I think they had a very happy childhood, but that's not the point, you know. When they were teenagers, I was, okay, I didn't smack them, I didn't abuse them, but I wasn't present, yeah? I wasn't present. I started forgetting if I'd kissed them goodnight, or, you know, I couldn't remember what they had on after school, so I'd have to sort of casually say, you know, over breakfast, oh, can you just remind me what's on today? And, you know, and that brings me to the shame part, you know. It's just, shame is something which has taken me back to drink numerous times, because I just wanted to curl into a deep dark hole and just disappear, because I have felt so ashamed, because I love my children and my family and my friends so much. Yeah.
Well, shame does have its way of keeping people hindered, regardless of what the issue is or the cause is for feeling the shame. It could have been something that you've said, something that you've done, something that you are currently doing and you wish you hadn't done in that particular moment. But it has a way of just grabbing a hold, and it makes you believe that forgiveness isn't on the other side. It makes you believe that there's no hope left in that moment. And boy, does shame lie to us sometimes, because it makes us believe things that aren't true. And I know that for someone who's going through something, there's a loved one that says, I don't want to shame you. I just want to love you. I just want to be there for you and help you go through that. Which kind of leads to my next question, and that is, when you realize that I may have something going on in the beginning stages, as opposed to the latter stages of, you know that you're blacking out, you know that you're having issues, how can family members help in the various stages? Is there something that they could do in the beginning stages that would really speak volumes, as opposed to waiting until it's at the very latter stages?
Yeah, I think, you know, again, it comes down to just being aware, you know, and I think if you notice a loved one is, you know, drinking, drugging, what, you know, like whatever, gambling, you know, because it's obviously, you know, it will be very obvious, say, you know, to someone's partner, you know, husband, wife, or, I think, you know, lovingly approach them and say, look, I think, you know, you are going a bit far now. And if they still don't listen, which was me, my first husband, yeah, he put me into rehab. That was in Australia. And being a pedigree, thoroughbred addict, you know, I talked my way out of that first rehab after 10 days. And I had to fill in all these questions, and one of them, you know, it was things like, what will you do if you feel like a drink? And I said things like, I'll take the dog for a walk. Yeah, right.
Sounds good, right?
Sounds good. Yeah, what I'll actually do is go to the bottle shop and, you know, stock up. So, yeah, that didn't last long. So my husband, my now ex-husband, put me in for the second time. I did stay the full 3 weeks. I absolutely despised AA. I sat in the rooms because you had to go. It was part of the rehab. And I remember thinking, ooh, sad people, do you know what I mean? If this is what recovery is, I'm not really sure I want it, you know what I mean? Which, how arrogant of me, because, you know, these are people who had multiple, you know, years of, you know, sobriety. So anyway, I got out, and then I'm back in the third time, and I thought, right, now this is serious, you know. So I got a sponsor, and that's when he said the famous words, you know, don't let my story become yours. And, you know, the rule of thumb is 90 meetings in 90 days, which was very, very important. And in Sydney, I was very blessed because you've got breakfast meetings, lunchtime meetings, evening meetings. So some days I would go to 2 or 3 meetings a day, because boredom is another thing, you know, which would lead me back to drink. So it was, you know, and keeping in touch with my girlfriends there. But I went to lots of meetings, a lot of meetings, yeah. And that's how I finally, how I got sober first time round, yeah.
And it's so interesting that you mentioned that. And one of the things that that I remind my clients that are going through a something is that we have to know what our triggers are. So many times, and the one that I remind them, and there are different triggers for different people, but just remembering blast. Are you bored? Are you lonely? Are you stressed? Are you angry? Are you tired? You know, those things can cause us to do things that later on we go, boy, I shouldn't have done that, you know? And it doesn't necessarily have to just be an addiction. You could be right there on the edge, and being bored will cause you to call that person that you shouldn't call, to take that drink that you shouldn't take, just because you want to feel something in that moment. So, you know, again, thank you for being brave, for coming on and sharing your story. And I know that there's someone watching that says, this is what I needed to hear, and now it's time for me to make a change. Thank you so much, Sarah, for being on Daily Spark TV.
Thank you very much for having me on the show.
And thank you. I hope that I have inspired, empowered, and enlightened you. Until next time, everyone, be blessed in the Lord. Bye-bye.